the devil. Good evening.
Picture a character so quirky and universally adored that even decades later, people still can't get enough of him. Today, we're diving into the world of one of the most beloved quirky characters in television history, Mr. Bean. Stick around if you've ever wondered why the show ended, whether Mr. Bean found love, or if he'll ever return. Why did they stop Mr. Bean? Here's the real scoop. Why would a wildly successful show stop after just 15 episodes? Imagine creating a character so iconic that it became timeless in just 15 episodes. That's exactly what Rowan Atkinson did with Mr. Bean. Between 1990 and 1995, Mr. Bean took the world by storm. But all good things must come to an end, especially if you want them to remain great. Rowan Atkinson felt that Mr. Bean had achieved all it could, and rather than risk watering down the humor, he decided to stop while they were ahead, ending the show with a perfect bow. It was a conscious choice to keep Mr. Bean's comedy sharp, fresh, and always memorable. The decision to end the show was bittersweet for fans, but it ensured that Mr. Bean remained a cherished character without overexposure or decline in quality. Sometimes, less is truly more, and in the case of Mr. Bean, this philosophy helped cement his legacy. Why was Rowan Atkinson divorced? Rowan Atkinson's personal life is quite different from Mr. Bean's fictional world. While Mr. Bean never had a wife, Rowan Atkinson was married to Sunetra Sastry for 24 years before they divorced in 2015. Sometimes, even long marriages face their challenges, and Rowan moved on with actress Louise Ford. It's important to remember that Mr. Bean and Rowan Atkinson are not one and the same. The actor's life is far more complex than the bumbling character he plays on screen. Divorce is never an easy topic, and Rowan's split from Sunetra was handled with as much privacy as possible. Despite the challenges, Rowan found happiness again, and it's a reminder that life can take unexpected turns, much like the unpredictable adventures of Mr. Bean. Which country is Mr. Bean from? Ever wondered where Mr. Bean calls home? Let's take a quick trip across the pond to discover that Mr. Bean is British through and through. He lives in London, and his comedic adventures often take him through the streets of the iconic city. What's amazing is that Mr. Bean's humor isn't just for the British. His physical comedy transcended language, making it loved by audiences all around the world. London, with its charming streets and quintessentially British quirks, served as the perfect backdrop for Mr. Bean's antics. Whether he was getting into trouble at a local fair, causing chaos in a department store, or trying to outsmart a parking meter, the setting added to the charm of the show. The universality of Mr. Bean's humor made him a global phenomenon, proving that laughter truly has no borders. Who is Mr. Bean's daughter? Here's a fun fact you might not know. Did you know that Rowan Atkinson has a talented daughter named Lily? Lily Atkinson is an actress and singer in her own right. She's walked the red carpet with her famous dad and even appeared in some of his films like Johnny English Reborn. It seems like talent really runs in the family, but Lily is determined to shine in her own spotlight. Lily's artistic pursuits show that she is carving her own path, distinct from her father's iconic roles. She has embraced a career that showcases her musical talent, blending acting and singing, and giving audiences a glimpse of her versatility. It's inspiring to see the next generation of Atkinson stepping into the limelight with their own unique flair. Lily's journey reminds us that while she shares her father's talent, she is much more than just Mr. Bean's daughter. Who is the real-life Mr. Bean? Let's pull back the curtain. The genius behind Mr. Bean is, of course, Rowan Atkinson himself. But Rowan isn't just Mr. Bean. He's a creative genius who drew inspiration from legends like Charlie Chaplin and Jacques Tati. His incredible ability to convey humor without words, relying on body language and facial expressions, is what made Mr. Bean so universally adored. Rowan Atkinson's Mr. Bean is the modern-day equivalent of silent film greats, capturing audiences without ever saying much at all. Rowan's comedic talent extends far beyond Mr. Bean, with roles in Blackadder and Johnny English showcasing his versatility. Yet, there's something about Mr. Bean that resonates so deeply with audiences, perhaps because of Rowan's commitment to the craft of physical comedy. Rowan Atkinson has often described Mr. Bean as a child in an adult's body, a character who navigates the world with innocence and naivete, which is part of what makes him so endearing. When was Mr. Bean popular? Let's take a trip down memory lane. The 1990s, a simpler time when TV shows didn't need countless seasons to make a mark. Mr. Bean made his mark between 1990 and 1995, but his popularity didn't end there. The reruns, movies, and even the animated series helped keep Mr. Bean alive in the hearts of fans, young and old. The character became a pop culture icon because the humor spoke to everyone, regardless of age or language. The enduring popularity of Mr. Bean can be attributed to his timeless appeal. Even after the original episodes stopped airing, the character continued to find new fans through adaptations and new formats. The movies, including Bean and Mr. Bean's Holiday, brought Mr. Bean to the big screen, allowing audiences to experience his antics in new settings. The animated series, which started in 2002, introduced Mr. Bean to younger generations, proving that good humor never ages. Does Mr. Bean fall in love? Here's a side of Mr. Bean you might not have expected. Romance. Mr. Bean, despite his childlike innocence, did have a girlfriend. Her name was Irma Gobb, and she appeared in a few episodes. Their relationship, though, was hilariously awkward, much like everything else in Mr. Bean's life. Irma had dreams of marriage, but Mr. Bean, well, he was always a bit too distracted by his misadventures to realize that. Love was there, but in typical Mr. Bean style, it was never quite what you'd expect. The dynamic between Mr. Bean and Irma added a layer of charm to the show, as it highlighted Mr. Bean's complete obliviousness to conventional romantic gestures. Despite Irma's patience and her clear hints, Mr. Bean remained blissfully unaware, leading to many humorous moments. Their relationship was a reminder that even in love, Mr. Bean was truly one of a kind, naive, unpredictable, and always unintentionally funny. Did Mr. Bean ever speak? Have you ever wondered why Mr. Bean hardly spoke?
I'm Dr. Bean, apparently.
One of the things that made Mr. Bean so unique was how little he spoke. He communicated through mumbles, grunts, and those unforgettable facial expressions. But yes, Mr. Bean did speak on rare occasions, usually just a word or two, often barely understandable. The choice to keep dialogue to a minimum was intentional, and it's part of what made the show so universally funny. No matter where you were from, you could understand Mr. Bean's antics. This limited use of dialogue was inspired by the great silent film actors, allowing the humor to transcend cultural and linguistic barriers. By relying on physical comedy and universal gestures, Mr. Bean became a character who was understood everywhere, making him truly global. Rowan Atkinson masterfully used Mr. Bean's rare words as a comedic tool. When Mr. Bean spoke, it was always worth the wait and added an extra layer of humor to the scene. Is Mr. Bean good for kids? Parents often ask. Is Mr. Bean suitable for children? Mr. Bean is definitely kid-friendly. The humor is light-hearted, often revolving around simple situations that spiral hilariously out of control. There's no strong language or inappropriate content, just good, clean fun. Kids love the slapstick comedy, and adults enjoy the clever physical humor that makes Mr. Bean such a timeless classic. The simplicity of Mr. Bean's humor makes it accessible to children while also being enjoyable for adults. His misadventures, whether he's attempting to cook a turkey or trying to paint his apartment in an unorthodox way, are scenarios that are funny and entertaining for all ages. The physical comedy and exaggerated expressions are perfect for young viewers, while the subtle wit and clever setups make it equally enjoyable for parents. Mr. Bean is a true family show that brings generations together in laughter. Will Mr. Bean ever return? And now, the big question, will Mr. Bean ever make a comeback? Sadly, it doesn't seem likely. Rowan Atkinson has mentioned that Mr. Bean is a physically demanding role, and after all these years, he's decided it's best to leave the character as is. However, he hasn't completely said goodbye. Rowan has lent his voice to Mr. Bean, the animated series, ensuring the character continues to delight new generations, and thanks to reruns, movies, and animations, Mr. Bean will never truly disappear. The animated series has allowed Rowan Atkinson to keep Mr. Bean alive without the physical toll of the live-action performance. While we may not see a new live-action Mr. Bean episode, the character's influence continues in many forms. Merchandise, animated adventures, and the iconic reruns ensure that Mr. Bean remains a staple of comedy, and who knows, perhaps one day Rowan Atkinson might surprise us with another appearance. After all, Mr. Bean has a way of popping up when you least expect it.
Thank you
For joining me today in reminiscing about the quirky, unforgettable Mr. Bean. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering his antics, one thing's for sure. Mr. Bean's legacy of laughter will continue to brighten our days for years to come. Let me know in the comments, what's your favorite Mr. Bean moment? Until next time, keep smiling and stay curious.